In the vast darkness between stars, where the coldest hearts abandon their weakest, humanity's greatest strength isn't their weapons, their technology, or their numbers. It's something far more dangerous to those who prey upon the innocent. Their absolute refusal to let anyone suffer alone. When the galaxy's most feared predator species makes the mistake of leaving one of their own to die in human space, they're about to learn why every civilized world whispers the same warning. Never harm the innocent where humans can see. They don't just rescue, they remember. What begins as a simple act of compassion will ignite a chain of events that reshapes the balance of power across three-star systems. Because when humans say, no one gets left behind, they don't just mean their own kind. They mean everyone. The emergency beacon pierced through the cosmic static like a dying scream, its distress signal barely registering on the sensors of the human cargo vessel Steadfast Promise. Captain Elena Vasquez had been hauling mining equipment between the Outer Rim colonies for 15 years, and she learned to recognize the difference between automated Mayday calls and genuine terror. This one carried the unmistakable signature of something alive and suffering. Marcus, plot an intercept course. She ordered her navigator, a young man whose enthusiasm for exploration hadn't yet been dulled by years in the void, and prepped the medical bay. Whatever's out there, it's hurt bad. The source of the signal hung motionless against the star field, a dark speck that resolved into a damaged escape pod as they approached. The craft was unlike anything in human databases, its organic curves and biometallic hull suggesting alien origin. Scorch marks and deep gouges told the story of a violent separation from its mother ship, while the failing life support systems painted an even grimmer picture. Biosigns are weak, but present, reported Dr. Sarah Chun from her position at the sensor array. As the ship's physician and xenobiologist, she'd studied theoretical alien physiology for years, but never expected to encounter it firsthand. Single occupant, approximately 40 kilograms, core temperature dropping fast. Whatever species this is, hypothermia is setting in. Elena made the decision that would change everything. Bring it aboard. The cargo bay filled with the hiss of equalizing pressure as the damaged pod settled onto the deck. The outer hull was still warm to the touch, suggesting the attack had been recent. Marcus ran his scanner over the surface, searching for a way inside while Elena and Dr. Chun suited up in environmental gear. First contact protocols demanded caution, but the fading life signs allowed no time for extended deliberation. The pod's emergency release responded to external manipulation, its biomechanical systems recognizing the universal signs of rescue. The hatch dilated open with a wet, organic sound, releasing a cloud of vapor that carried an oddly familiar scent, something between pine needles and fresh rain. What they found inside defied every expectation about apex predators that Elena had ever formed. The creature was small, perhaps the size of a human child, with thick auburn fur marked by distinctive black stripes. Its body plan was vaguely feline, but more robust with powerful hindquarters and retractable claws designed for both climbing and combat. Most striking were its eyes, large, golden, and filled with an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. Despite its fearsome species reputation across known space, this individual was clearly young, barely past infancy. It's a Kithran cub, Dr. Chun breathed, her voice tight with disbelief. The Kithra were legendary throughout the galaxy as the ultimate pack hunters, a species so efficient at warfare that most civilizations paid tribute rather than face them in battle. They conquered worlds with tooth and claw, showing no mercy to the weak or wounded. Yet here lay one of their young, abandoned to die alone in the void. The cub's breathing was shallow and irregular, its small form racked by periodic tremors. Deep slashes across its ribs spoke of violence, while the primitive bandages wrapped around its torso suggested someone had tried to help before abandoning it to space. Elena knelt beside the injured creature, her maternal instincts overriding any fear of its species' reputation. "Help me get it to the medical bay," she instructed, gathering the surprisingly light form in her arms. The cub stirred slightly at her touch, golden eyes fluttering open to focus on her face. For a moment, predator and human regarded each other across the vast gulf of evolution. Then, the cub's eyes closed again, its body relaxing in a gesture of absolute trust that humbled Elena to her core. The ship's medical facility had never been designed for alien physiology, but Dr. Chun adapted quickly. She worked with focused intensity, using every piece of xenobiological knowledge she possessed while the automated systems provided what data they could. The cub's wounds were severe but not fatal. Deep punctures that suggested combat with its own kind, along with signs of prolonged malnutrition and dehydration. The injuries are consistent with intraspecies violence, Dr. Chun reported as she cleaned and sealed the wounds. These marks match Kitharan claw patterns. This little one was attacked by its own pack. Marcus monitored the surrounding space while Elena and the doctor worked, his sensors sweeping for any sign of Kitharan vessels. The attack that damaged the escape pod couldn't have happened far from here. And if a Kitharan pack ship discovered humans harboring one of their outcasts, the consequences could be severe. Nothing on passive scans, he reported. But, Captain, we need to talk about what we're doing here. The Kithara don't take kindly to interference in their affairs. If they find out we have one of their cubs. Elena looked down at the small form on the medical table, now breathing more steadily as Dr. Chen's treatments took effect. The cub had instinctively curled into a defensive position, even in unconsciousness, as if expecting another attack. Whatever had happened to separate it from its pack, the experience had left deep psychological scars alongside the physical ones. They abandoned it. Marcus, she said quietly, left it to die alone in an escape pod. What kind of people do that to a child? The kind that rule half the known galaxy through fear, Marcus replied, though his voice lacked conviction. He too had seen the trust in those golden eyes, the way the cub had relaxed when Elena held it. But, Captain, we're talking about the Kithara. They don't form emotional attachments like humans do. To them, weakness is a fatal flaw that must be eliminated. Dr. Chin paused in her work, studying the readouts from her medical scanners. There's something else. These scan results show evidence of genetic modification, enhancement sequences that would increase strength, speed, and cognitive function. This isn't just any Kitharan cub. Someone invested considerable resources in its development. The implications were staggering. Enhanced Kitharans were rare, created only for positions of tremendous importance within their rigid pack hierarchies. For such a valuable individual to be abandoned suggested a level of internal conflict that most galactic intelligence services believed impossible among the seemingly unified Kitharan clans. Elena made her decision with the same certainty that had guided her through countless dangerous situations. We're taking it with us. Whatever happened to this cub, wherever its pack went, we're not leaving it to die. Elena, Marcus began, using her first name in his concern. Think about what you're saying. We're talking about harboring a member of the most dangerous species in known space. The Galactic Council has strict protocols about interference in Kitharan affairs. The Galactic Council isn't here, Elena replied firmly. And I've never met a protocol that was worth more than a child's life, no matter what species that child belongs to. Dr. Chin finished her immediate treatment and stepped back to review her work. The cub's vital signs had stabilized, though would need careful monitoring over the coming days. The wounds would heal, but the psychological trauma might take much longer to address. She'd done what she could with human medical knowledge, but caring for an alien child would require learning as they went. It's sleeping now, she reported. The sedatives I used should work on its neurochemistry, but I can't be certain. We'll need to monitor it constantly for the first few days. Elena nodded, settling into a chair beside the medical bed. The cub looked so small and vulnerable under the human medical equipment, its fierce heritage belied by its current helplessness. She found herself wondering what had led to its abandonment. What crime against pack law could justify leaving an enhanced cub to die alone in space? The answer, when it came, would prove more terrible than any of them could imagine. As the Steadfast Promise resumed course for the Kepler station, its crew was unaware that their act of compassion had been observed. Deep in the asteroid fields that bordered human space, a Kitharan scout vessel had detected the rescue. Its captain, a scarred veteran named Rakesh the Blood Hunter, watched the human ship disappear into hyperspace with cold satisfaction. The humans had taken the abomination, just as he had predicted they would. Their weakness for protecting the helpless was legendary throughout Kitharan space, a character flaw that had cost them dearly in past conflicts. But this time, their compassion would serve a greater purpose. Rakesh activated his long-range communicator, sending an encrypted message to coordinates deep within Kitharan territory. The message was brief, but filled with promise. The bait has been taken. The humans have claimed the defective one as their own. Await further orders. The trap was set, and the humans had walked into it with characteristic blindness to the larger game being played around them. Rakesh allowed himself a predatory smile as he settled in to track the human vessel. Soon, his pack leader would have the excuse needed to justify what was coming next. Aboard the steadfast promise, Elena maintained her vigil beside the sleeping cub, unaware that her act of mercy had just triggered a chain of events that would test everything humanity believed about protecting the innocent. The small form stirred slightly in its sleep, unconsciously seeking the warmth of her presence. Whatever came next, Elena knew she'd made the right choice. In a galaxy where the strong preyed upon the weak without consequence, sometimes the most radical act was simply refusing to look away from suffering. The Kithara might rule through fear and abandonment, but humanity had always walked a different path. They were about to discover just how far that path would take them, and what they were willing to sacrifice to defend a single life that others had deemed worthless. The cub's rescue was just the beginning of a story that would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about strength, weakness, and the true nature of civilization itself. 3 days passed before the cub opened its eyes with full awareness, though consciousness had come in fragments during the intervening time. Dr. Chun had monitored every vital sign, adjusting treatments as she learned how Kitharan physiology responded to human medicine. Elena had barely left the medical bay, catching sleep in the chair beside the bed while Marcus handled the ship's operations. When those golden eyes finally focused with clear intelligence, the cub's first reaction was pure terror. It erupted from the medical bed with inhuman speed, sending monitoring equipment crashing to the floor as it sought escape from the unfamiliar environment. Claws extended instinctively, scoring deep gouges in the metal bulkhead as the cub scrambled for purchase on the smooth walls. A keening wail escaped its throat, a sound of pure anguish that spoke to the deepest fears of abandonment and betrayal. Elena moved slowly, keeping her hands visible as she approached the terrified creature. Every instinct told her to rush forward, to comfort and contain, but years of handling frightened animals during her childhood on the agricultural colony of New Eden had taught her patience. "Easy, little one," she said softly, her voice carrying the same gentle tone she'd once used with injured pets. "You're safe here. No one's going to hurt you." The cub's ears flattened against its skull as it pressed itself into the corner where two bulkheads met, eyes darting frantically between Elena and the medical equipment that surrounded it. Its breathing was rapid and shallow, panic overriding the healing that had taken place during its unconsciousness. The wounds Dr. Chun had so carefully treated threatened to reopen as the cub's movements grew more frantic. "Where's my pack?" The words came in accented standard galactic, shaped by vocal cords never meant for human speech. The cub's voice was high and thin, barely above a whisper, but the intelligence behind it was unmistakable. "Where are my siblings? Why do I smell only humans?" Elena felt her heart break at the question. The cub didn't remember its abandonment, the escape pod, or the violence that had led to its current situation. In its mind, it had simply awakened among strangers with no sign of its family. The trust it had shown while unconscious was gone, replaced by the natural fear of a child separated from everything familiar. "What do you remember, little one?" Elena asked, settling cross-legged on the floor to make herself less threatening. "Tell me about the last thing you recall before waking up here." The cub's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but something in Elena's tone seemed to reach through its panic. It remained pressed against the wall, but the desperate scrambling ceased as it fought to organize fragmented memories. "Training," it said finally. "Combat exercises with my clutch siblings. The Packmaster was displeased with my performance. I was weak, hesitant to strike the killing blow during the final trial." The admission came with visible shame, ears drooping as the cub relived its failure. "The others succeeded. I was marked as defective." Dr. Chun had entered the medical bay during the conversation, her movements carefully controlled to avoid startling their patient. She carried a portable scanner, hoping to check the cub's healing progress, but the device only increased its agitation. "Defective how?" Elena pressed gently. She needed to understand what had happened to this child, what could drive a species known for their pack loyalty to abandon one of their own. The cub's claws dug deeper into the wall, plating as painful memories surfaced. I showed mercy to a wounded prey animal during the hunt. I hesitated when ordered to eliminate a captured enemy's offspring. The packmaster declared me contaminated by weakness, unsuitable for the warrior caste. Its voice grew smaller with each admission. I brought shame to my bloodline. Elena exchanged a glance with Dr. Chun, understanding beginning to dawn. The Kithara were bred for war, raised from birth to value strength and aggression above all else. A cub that showed compassion would indeed be seen as fundamentally flawed by their society standards. The modifications Dr. Chun had detected weren't just enhancements. They were attempts to correct what the Kithara saw as a genetic defect. "My name is Elena," she said, introducing herself properly for the first time. "This is Dr. Chun, and we're here to help you heal. You've been badly injured, and you need time to recover." "I am Kestis of the Crimson Fong Pack," the cub replied with automatic formality, though the pack name came with visible pain. "And I should not be here. The defective do not deserve healing. The weak must be culled for the strength of the whole." The words were clearly taught responses, drilled into the young mind until they became unquestioned truth. Elena felt anger rise at the thought of a child being conditioned to believe it deserved abandonment and death for the crime of showing mercy. "That's not true, Kestis," she said firmly. "Every life has value. Compassion isn't weakness. It's one of the greatest strengths any being can possess." Kestis stared at her with confusion that spoke to a lifetime of conditioning. "You are human. Your species is known for such foolishness. It is why you will never be true warriors, why stronger peoples must rule the galaxy while you cling to your inferior colonies." The casual dismissal of humanity stung, but Elena recognized it for what it was, learned rhetoric that this child had never had reason to question. The Kithara control their information as tightly as they control their society, ensuring that their young knew only approved versions of galactic history. "Is that what you've been taught about us?" Elena asked. "That compassion makes us weak. It is obvious truth," Kestis replied, though uncertainty colored its voice. "The strong survive, the weak perish. Your refusal to accept this natural law limits your potential for greatness." Dr. Chen finally managed to approach close enough to scan the cub's injuries, her movements so gradual that Kestis barely noticed the medical examination. The results were encouraging. The wounds were healing well, and the cub's vital signs had returned to normal ranges. Physically, it would make a full recovery within days. Emotionally and psychologically, the damage might take much longer to address. "Kestis," Elena said carefully, "what if I told you that humans have fought and defeated Kitharan forces in 17 different military engagements over the past century?" The cub's ears perked up with interest despite itself. "That is impossible. Humans lack the warrior spirit necessary for victory against true predators. We have something else," Elena explained. "We have each other. When humans fight, we don't abandon our wounded or leave our weak behind. We adapt, we overcome, and we never give up on our own people." Marcus's voice echoed from the ship's communication system, interrupting the conversation. "Captain, we've got a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting a Kitharan vessel on an intercept course. They'll reach us in approximately 6 hours." Elena felt ice form in her stomach. The rescue had always carried the risk of Kitharan retaliation, but she'd hoped they would have more time to reach the safety of human space. Kepler Station was still 2 days away at current speed, too far to reach before the pursuing vessel caught up. Kestis heard the announcement and immediately understood the implications. "They have come for me," it said with resignation. "The Blood Hunter follows to ensure that defective specimens do not contaminate other populations. You should surrender me now. Perhaps they will allow you to live if you cooperate." "We're not surrendering anyone," Elena said firmly. "And we're certainly not handing over a child to people who already tried to kill it once." The cub's confusion deepened. "You would risk your lives for a defective? This makes no sense. I am worthless to my own pack. Why would aliens value what my own people have discarded?" Elena stood and moved closer, noting that Kestis no longer flinched away from her approach. The fear was still there, but curiosity was beginning to overcome conditioning as the cub tried to understand these strange humans who defied everything it had been taught about galactic nature. "Because that's who we are," Elena said simply. "We don't measure worth by strength or combat ability. We protect those who need protection, regardless of their species or their past. Dr. Chun finished her scans and updated Elena on the cub's condition. It's remarkable how quickly the healing is progressing. Kithran physiology is incredibly resilient. With proper care, Kestis should be fully recovered within the week. The enhancements, Kestis said quietly, apparently having overheard. They were meant to correct my deficiencies, to make me a proper warrior despite my flawed instincts. The pain was considerable. Elena felt her anger at the Kithran system intensify. They had subjected a child to genetic modification in an attempt to suppress its natural compassion, treating mercy as a disease to be cured rather than a virtue to be celebrated. The modifications were extensive, Dr. Chen confirmed. Enhanced musculature, improved reflexes, accelerated healing. Someone invested months of work and considerable resources trying to change this cub's fundamental nature. And when it still showed mercy, they threw it away, Elena concluded. Gave up on it completely rather than accept that compassion might be an asset rather than a liability. Kestis listened to this exchange with growing wonder. These humans spoke of its modifications not with the clinical detachment of Kithran scientists, but with sympathy for the suffering involved. They saw its mercy not as a defect to be corrected, but as something valuable that had been threatened by the enhancement process. I do not understand you, Kestis admitted. Your behavior contradicts everything I know about survival and success. Yet you rescued me from certain death, healed my wounds, and now speak of protecting me from my own people. Why? Elena knelt down to bring herself to the cub's eye level, seeing past the fearsome reputation of its species to the confused and frightened child underneath. Because it's the right thing to do. Because every being deserves a chance to choose their own path, regardless of what others expect from them. Even if that being belongs to a species that has killed humans, even if protecting it might cost you your lives. Especially then, Elena replied. The moment we start deciding who deserves compassion based on their species or their past, we lose the very thing that makes us human. Marcus's voice interrupted again, carrying new urgency. Captain, the Kithran vessel has increased speed. They'll reach us in 4 hours, and our engines can't match their acceleration. We need to make a decision about our response. Elena looked at Kestis, seeing the resignation return to those golden eyes as the cub prepared for inevitable recapture. The Kithara who had abandoned it once would not make the same mistake twice. This time, they would ensure the defective specimen was permanently eliminated. Marcus, plot a course for the Magellan Nebula, Elena ordered. We're going to lose them in the sensor interference. Captain, that's going to add days to our journey, and the nebula's dangerous for ships our size. Not as dangerous as handing over a child to be executed, Elena replied. Dr. Chun, how long until Kestis is strong enough to move around the ship safely? With the accelerated healing, probably by tomorrow, the doctor replied. But, Elena, the psychological trauma might take much longer to process. This cub has been conditioned from birth to believe in its own worthlessness. Kestis listened to these plans with amazement. The humans were willing to risk everything. Their ship, their lives, their mission, to protect a being they'd known for only days. It defied every principle of survival that had been drilled into its young mind. You are making a mistake, Kestis said quietly. The Bloodhunter will not give up the chase. And if other Kithran forces learn of your interference, they will consider it an act of war. You will doom your entire species for the sake of one defective cub. Elena smiled, and there was something in her expression that reminded Kestis of the predators from its homeworld, a quiet confidence that spoke of hidden strength. Let them come. They're about to learn why humans are the only species that has never lost a war when fighting to protect the innocent. The statement should have been laughable. Humans were smaller, weaker, less naturally aggressive than the Kithara. But something in Elena's tone suggested that there were kinds of strength that couldn't be measured in claws and fangs, forms of power that the Kithara had never learned to recognize or counter. As the steadfast promise altered course for the nebula, Kestis began to understand that its rescue was part of something larger than a simple act of compassion. These humans possessed a determination that bordered on the fanatical when it came to protecting those under their care. They would risk everything rather than abandon what they had chosen to defend. For the first time in its short life, Kestis began to hope that perhaps the Kithran definition of strength was not the only one in the galaxy. Perhaps there were other ways to measure worth than the ability to kill without hesitation. Perhaps mercy was not a weakness to be cured, but a strength to be celebrated. The thought was terrifying in its implications, challenging everything the cub had ever believed about the natural order. But as Elena settled back in her vigil and Dr. Chun continued her caring ministrations, Kestis allowed itself to consider the impossible possibility that it might be exactly as it was meant to be: compassionate, questioning, and worthy of protection rather than elimination. Behind them, the Blood Hunter maintained its pursuit, its captain confident that the humans would eventually surrender their prize rather than face the consequences of continued defiance. Rakesh the Blood Hunter had never encountered humans who refused to calculate the odds and choose the practical path over the righteous one. He was about to receive an education in the difference between fear-based survival and hope-based resistance. The humans had made their choice, and they would see it through regardless of the cost. In doing so, they would teach a single Kithrin cub that there were alternatives to the law of the pack, and that sometimes the greatest warriors were those who fought not to destroy, but to protect. The Magellan Nebula stretched across space like a vast, luminous web, its ionized gases creating a spectacular light show that was as beautiful as it was dangerous. The steadfast promise plunged into the outer reaches of the phenomenon, its sensors immediately fuzzing with interference as charged particles played havoc with the ship's navigation systems. Elena gripped her command chair as the vessel shuddered through a particularly dense gas pocket, the autopilot struggling to maintain course through the shifting electromagnetic fields. Behind them, somewhere in the swirling chaos of the nebula's edge, the Kithrin ship pursued with relentless determination. Sensor efficiency down to 30%. Marcus reported, his fingers dancing across the navigation console as he tried to plot a safe course through the astronomical obstacle course. If we can't see them, they can't see us either. But, Captain, we're flying blind in here. Kestis had been allowed out of the medical bay that morning, Dr. Chun declaring the cub physically fit despite the ongoing psychological challenges. The young Kithrin now sat in the ship's small observation lounge, staring out at the nebula's shifting colors with an expression of wonder that seemed foreign on features designed for predatory intensity. "I have never seen anything like this," Kestis admitted as Elena joined it at the viewport. "Kithrin ships avoid such regions. We prefer the certainty of clear space where enemies can be tracked and eliminated efficiently." Elena settled beside the cub, noting how it had grown more comfortable with human proximity over the past day. The frightened, desperate creature they'd rescued was slowly giving way to a curious and intelligent child eager to understand the universe beyond Kithrin doctrine. "Beauty has its own value," Elena said, watching a particularly spectacular cascade of azure and violet gases drift past the ship. "Not everything needs to serve a tactical purpose." "My instructors would call such thinking a waste of mental resources," Kestis replied, though its voice carried a note of doubt. "They taught that efficiency is the highest virtue, that energy spent on non-essential observations weakens the warrior spirit." "What do you think?" Elena asked. "Do you feel weaker for appreciating something beautiful?" Kestis considered the question with the seriousness that humans might reserve for discussions of galactic politics. Its golden eyes reflected the nebula's shifting hues as it struggled with concepts that challenged fundamental programming. "I feel different," the cub admitted finally, more aware of possibilities I had never considered. "But difference has always been classified as deficiency in my education." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the bridge. Marcus's voice carried new tension as he announced the detection of multiple contacts on the long-range sensors. "Captain, we've got company." 3 ships, Kithrin configuration, moving in a search pattern through the nebula. They're coordinating their sweeps to cover maximum area. Elena felt her blood chill. A single Kithrin vessel had been dangerous enough, but 3 suggested a level of commitment that went far beyond recovering one defective cub. Someone wanted Kestis back badly enough to risk multiple ships in the hazardous environment of the nebula. "Identification on the lead vessel?" she asked as she and Kestis hurried back to the bridge. "The Crimson Fong, heavy cruiser class," Marcus replied. "The other 2 are destroyers, Bloodwake and Savage Honor." "That's not a recovery force, Captain. That's a pack hunting formation." Kestis went rigid at the mention of the lead ship's name. "The Crimson Fong is my birth pack's command vessel. Packmaster Theron leads the hunt himself." The cub's voice carried a mixture of fear and confusion. But why would he commit such resources to reclaim a defective? The pack's honor was already restored by my exile. Elena studied the tactical display, noting the methodical way the Kithran ships were quartering the nebula. This wasn't the desperate search of someone trying to prevent a diplomatic incident. This was the calculated hunt of predators who knew exactly what they were seeking and why they needed it back. Dr. Chun, join us on the bridge, Elena commanded through the intercom. I need you to review everything we know about Kestis's modifications. There's something we're missing about why this cub is so important. The doctor arrived within minutes, carrying a portable data pad loaded with her analysis of the genetic enhancements. As she shared her findings, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The modifications aren't just physical, Dr. Chin explained. There are neural pathway enhancements that affect memory retention, pattern recognition, and tactical analysis. Someone spent enormous resources creating a perfect warrior, and the results were beyond anything I've seen in galactic medical literature. But the compassion remained, Elena noted. Despite all their efforts, they couldn't eliminate Kestis's natural empathy. That's what makes this so valuable, Dr. Chin continued. The Kithara have created a being with enhanced physical and mental capabilities who retains the capacity for mercy and moral reasoning. In the right hands, that combination could revolutionize their entire approach to warfare and diplomacy. Marcus looked up from his sensor readings with alarm. Captain, one of the destroyers is changing course. They're heading directly for our position. Somehow, they've picked us up through the interference. Elena's mind raced through possibilities. The nebula should have hidden them from conventional sensors, but the Kithara were known for their advanced tracking technologies. More troubling was the realization that they weren't just being hunted, they were being herded toward some predetermined destination. It's a trap, Kestis said quietly, its enhanced intellect reaching the same conclusion. The Packmaster is not trying to corner you. He wants you to run in a specific direction. Toward what? Elena demanded, but before anyone could answer, the ship's proximity alarms shrieked to life. A massive shape materialized from the nebula's swirling gases directly ahead, its biometallic hull scarred by countless battles. The dreadnought Apex Predator hung motionless in space like a sleeping leviathan, its weapon port sealed but somehow more threatening for their restraint. That's Admiral Vexter's command ship, Kestis breathed, terror evident in its voice. The pack of packs has come from me, personally. Elena felt the weight of realization settle over her like a suffocating blanket. This wasn't about recovering a single cub. The highest levels of Kithran command were involved, which meant Kestis represented something far more significant than a genetic experiment gone wrong. Incoming transmission, Marcus announced, his voice tight with stress. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the Kithran dreadnought. Admiral Vexter stood at its center, a mountain of scarred muscle and predatory grace who embodied everything terrifying about his species. Behind him, lesser pack members moved with synchronized precision, their every gesture speaking of absolute loyalty to their commander. Human vessel. Vexter's voice rumbled through the communication system like distant thunder. You carry something that belongs to us. Return it immediately, and you will be permitted to continue your insignificant lives. Elena stepped forward, drawing herself up to her full height despite knowing the gesture was meaningless to creatures who could crush her with their bare hands. Admiral Vexter, I'm Captain Elena Vasquez of the independent freighter Steadfast Promise. We rescued a wounded child from a damaged escape pod. Under galactic law, we have the right to provide medical assistance to any being in distress. Vexter's laugh was like the sound of breaking bones. Galactic law is a human construct that holds no meaning for true warriors. You have taken something precious from us, little prey animal. Return the prototype, and perhaps we will allow you to witness our greatness before you die. The word prototype hit Elena like a physical blow. Not defective, not exile, but prototype. Kestis wasn't a failed experiment. It was the first successful iteration of something revolutionary. The prototype represents years of research and development. Vexter continued, apparently enjoying the revelation. A new breed of Kithran that combines our natural superiority with enhanced capabilities and strategic thinking. Your kind's weakness for protecting the helpless has delivered our greatest achievement directly into our claws. Elena glanced at Kestis, seeing the horror of understanding dawn in the cub's golden eyes. It hadn't been abandoned for its failures. It had been deliberately placed where humans would find it. The escape pod, the distress signal, even the wounds had been carefully staged to trigger humanity's protective instincts. The compassion was never a flaw, Kestis whispered, pieces falling into place with devastating clarity. It was the feature they were trying to preserve while enhancing everything else. A warrior who could think like humans, understand their weaknesses, but fight with Kitharan superiority. The perfect infiltrator, Dr. Chen added, her medical knowledge filling in the horrifying gaps. Designed to trigger human protective responses while gathering intelligence on our defenses, our technologies, our psychological weaknesses. Vexter smiled, revealing fangs that could tear through human bone like paper. The prototype would have lived among you for years, protected by your foolish altruism while learning everything necessary to ensure your eventual conquest. But you have exceeded our expectations, little prey. By taking it willingly, you have demonstrated that humans cannot resist saving even their future destroyers. Elena felt fury rise to replace her initial shock. The cynical manipulation of humanity's compassion, the use of a child as an unwilling weapon, the assumption that mercy was merely weakness to be exploited, it crystallized everything she found detestable about the Kitharan approach to existence. "You're wrong about one thing, Admiral," she said, her voice carrying a steel that surprised even her crew. "Compassion isn't our weakness. It's our strength. And Kestis isn't your prototype anymore. Explain yourself, prey animal." Elena looked at the terrified cub, seeing not a weapon or tool, but a frightened child who had been used by everyone it had ever trusted. "Because we choose to see individuals, not categories. Kestis isn't a Kitharan or a prototype or a weapon. It's a person with the right to choose its own destiny. And I'm guessing that after learning what you really intended, that choice won't align with your plans." Kestis raised its head, meeting Elena's gaze with growing determination. "They made me to be their perfect spy among humans. But they could not eliminate my capacity for loyalty, only redirect it. I have seen how humans treat those they protect. I choose to stand with them." The declaration hit the Kitharan bridge like a physical blow. Vexter's expression shifted from smug confidence to pure rage as he realized that their perfect weapon had just declared independence from its creators. "The prototype will return willingly, or we will take it by force," Vexter snarled. "And you will learn the price of corrupting Kitharan property with your inferior values." Elena smiled, and there was something in her expression that made even the mighty Admiral pause. "Admiral, you've made two critical errors in your planning. First, you assumed that humans are weak because we show mercy. Second, you assumed that Kestis was your property to begin with. Clarify your meaning before I lose patience with this charade." "Human mercy comes with conditions," Elena explained. "We protect the innocent, but we destroy without hesitation those who threaten them. And as for ownership, Kestis chose to stand with us. That makes it family. And humans have one absolute rule when it comes to family, which is..." Elena's smile became predatory in a way that would have done credit to any Kitharan warrior. "We never, ever abandon each other, especially when facing bullies who mistake cruelty for strength." The communication cut off abruptly as Vexter processed the implications of the human's words. Around the bridge of the steadfast promise, Elena's crew prepared for what they knew would be the fight of their lives. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing the most dangerous military force in known space. But they had something the Kithara would never understand, the absolute certainty that some things were worth dying for, and the unshakable conviction that their cause was just. The battle ahead would test every principle humanity claimed to value, and determine whether compassion could truly triumph over cruelty when backed by sufficient courage. Kestis stood beside Elena, no longer the terrified exile or unwilling prototype, but a being who had chosen its own path despite the consequences. Together, they faced the approaching storm with the quiet determination of those who have found something worth fighting for, the right of every individual to choose their own destiny, regardless of what others might intend for them. The hunt was about to become a battle, and neither side would emerge unchanged from what was coming next. The first shots came without warning, crimson energy beams lancing through the nebula's swirling gases as the Kitharan destroyers opened fire on the steadfast promise. Elena threw herself into her command chair as the ship bucked under the impact, its modest shields flaring to contain energies that could have melted a city block. "Evasive maneuvers," she shouted over the screaming alerts. "Keep us in the densest part of the gas cloud." Marcus's hands flew over the navigation controls, sending the freighter into a spiraling dive through the nebula's most chaotic regions. The charged particles that interfered with sensors also disrupted targeting systems, turning what should have been a quick execution into a deadly game of hide and seek among the swirling stellar debris. Shields down to 60%, Dr. Chun reported from the engineering station she'd hastily taken over. "We can't take many more hits like that. This ship wasn't built for combat." Kestis crouched near the bridge's central console, its enhanced reflexes keeping it stable despite the ship's violent maneuvers. The Cub's golden eyes tracked the tactical display with predatory intensity, its modified neural pathways automatically analyzing the enemy's attack patterns. "The destroyers are herding us toward the dreadnought," it observed. "Admiral Vexter wants to capture the ship intact for study. He will not risk destroying me with excessive firepower." Elena seized on that information immediately. "Then we use that against them. Marcus, plot a course directly at the apex predator. If they want us alive, they'll have to be careful about how they stop us." "Captain, that's suicide," Marcus protested. "One broadside from that dreadnought will vaporize us." "Not if they think they might damage their precious prototype in the process," Elena replied grimly. "Sometimes the best defense is to make yourself too dangerous to kill." The steadfast promise changed course abruptly, accelerating toward the massive Kithrin flagship with desperate determination. Behind them, the pursuing destroyers were forced to cease fire or risk hitting their own command vessel, exactly as Elena had hoped. But Admiral Vexter proved more cunning than she'd anticipated. Instead of backing down, the dreadnought began launching smaller craft, boarding pods designed to attach themselves to an enemy vessel's hull and deliver assault teams directly into the target's corridors. "Incoming boarders," Marcus warned. 6 pods, launching from multiple vectors. "They're not trying to destroy us. They're planning to take the ship by force." Elena felt her options narrowing rapidly. The freighter had no weapons capable of stopping Kithrin boarding pods, and once enemy warriors made it aboard, the battle would become a matter of claw and fang in the ship's narrow corridors. 3 humans and 1 cub would not survive such an encounter. "There is another way," Kestis said quietly, its voice carrying the certainty of enhanced tactical analysis. "But you will not approve of my proposal." Elena looked at the young Kithrin, seeing determination that went far beyond the cub's physical years. "Tell me, allow myself to be captured. Return to Admiral Vexter willingly, claim that you attempted to convert me, but failed. He will believe this because it confirms his assumptions about human naivety and Kithrin superiority." "Absolutely not," Elena said immediately. "We're not trading you to save ourselves. That goes against everything we've fought for." "You misunderstand my plan," Kestis continued with patience that seemed almost adult. "I'm not suggesting surrender. I am proposing infiltration. The Admiral expects a prototype that has been corrupted by human weakness. Instead, he will receive a prototype that has learned the true meaning of strength from humans." Dr. Chin looked up from her console with sudden understanding. The modifications made to enhance Kestis also gave it perfect memory retention and accelerated learning. It's absorbed everything we've taught it about human values and tactics. "More than that," Kestis added, "my neural enhancements allow me to interface directly with Kithrin technology. I was designed to gather intelligence, but those same capabilities can be used to sabotage their systems from within." Elena felt her protective instincts warring with tactical necessity. The plan had merit, but it required putting a child directly into the hands of those who had already heard it once. Every maternal impulse screamed against the idea, even as her rational mind recognized it might be their only chance. "The risks are enormous," she said, "if they discover your true intentions. They will kill me, yes," Kestis acknowledged with calm acceptance. "But they plan to do so eventually regardless. The prototype was always meant to be a temporary tool, discarded once its usefulness ended. At least this way, my death might serve a purpose beyond their expansion plans." The boarding pods were closing rapidly, their armored forms barely visible against the nebula's shifting background. Elena had perhaps 2 minutes before Kithrin assault troops began cutting through the ship's hull, and still no clear path to safety for her crew. Marcus suddenly straightened at his station, his expression shifting from despair to desperate hope. "Captain, I'm reading something on the long-range sensors. Human ships, multiple contacts, approaching fast from the edge of the nebula." Elena's heart leaped as she recognized the energy signatures appearing on the display. 3 vessels in the distinctive configuration of Human Defense Force patrol cruisers, their arrival too timely to be coincidental. The distress beacon, she realized. When we first found Kestis, the automated systems must have logged and transmitted our position before we entered the nebula. Dr. Chun was already working to enhance the signal resolution. It's the Valiant Defender and Righteousness, Admiral Sarah Mitchell's fast response squadron. But, Captain, they're still 20 minutes out. We need to survive that long. The first boarding pod struck the ship's hull with a resonant clang, its cutting torches immediately beginning to burn through the outer plating. Elena watched the progress indicator with grim determination, knowing that her next decision would determine not just their survival, but the future relationship between humans and Kythera. "Kestis," she said finally, "if you're certain about this plan, then we'll support you. But I want you to know that from this moment forward, you're not just our responsibility, you're family. And that means we'll move heaven and earth to get you back safely." The cub's ears perked up at the word family, an expression of wonder crossing its features. In Kytheran society, family was defined by blood and pack hierarchy, bonds that could be severed by failure or disfavor. The human concept of chosen family, bonds forged by loyalty and love rather than genetics, was revolutionary in its implications. "I understand," Kestis replied solemnly, "and I will not dishonor the trust you place in me." Elena activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting on frequencies she knew the Kytheran fleet would monitor. "Admiral Vexter, this is Captain Vasquez. We're prepared to discuss terms for the return of your prototype." The response came within moments, Vexter's voice carrying smug satisfaction. "You see reason at last, prey animal. Prepare to transfer the prototype to our custody immediately." "Not so fast, Admiral. Our rescue of your prototype has created a diplomatic incident between our species. I'm willing to resolve this peacefully, but only with proper guarantees for my crew's safety." Elena was buying time, stalling until the Human Defense Force ships could arrive, but she also needed to sell the deception that would allow Kestis to reach the Kytheran flagship without suspicion. "The cub has been influenced by exposure to human values," she continued. "It may require reconditioning to restore proper Kytheran perspectives, but the basic prototype remains intact and functional." Vexter's laugh rumbled through the speakers. "Human contamination is easily corrected. The weak-minded are always susceptible to false ideologies, but pain and discipline can burn away such infections. Send the prototype to us now, and perhaps your death will be swift." Elena exchanged a meaningful look with Kestis, seeing resolve harden in those golden eyes. The cub understood that it was walking into torture and probable death, but also that its sacrifice might save not just the steadfast promise, but potentially countless other lives if it could disrupt Kytheran expansion plans. "One of our pods will dock with your vessel," Vexter continued. "The prototype will transfer willingly, or we will take it by force along with your corpses." A single boarding pod detached from the Kytheran assault wave, its movements more controlled than the others as it approached the freighter's main airlock. Elena could see through the viewport as armored Kytheran warriors prepared to board, their weapons ready, but not actively threatening as long as the transfer proceeded smoothly. "Remember," Elena told Kestis as they prepared for the handover, "you're not alone in this. We've seen what you're capable of, and we believe in your strength. Show them what happens when compassion learns to fight back." Kestis nodded, then did something that surprised everyone. It embraced Elena in a gesture of affection that was entirely human in its emotional content. The small arms wrapped around her waist with desperate gratitude, conveying more than words could express about what the past few days had meant to the young being. "Thank you," it whispered, "for teaching me that strength comes in many forms." The airlock cycled open, revealing the pod's interior and the waiting Kytheran warriors. Elena felt her heart break as Kestis walked calmly into the hands of its enemies, showing no sign of the fear it must be feeling as the pod sealed and departed for the flagship. "Now we wait," Elena said grimly, settling back into her command chair as the remaining boarding pods withdrew to a safe distance. "And pray that our gamble pays off." On the tactical display, the human defense force ships grew steadily closer, their weapons powered up and ready for combat. The Kithran fleet maintained position around the dreadnought, apparently confident that they had achieved their objective without the complications of human military involvement. They were about to learn that humans considered the protection of their chosen family to be worth any price, and that sometimes the most dangerous enemies were those who appear to surrender while planning their real attack from within. Kestis was now aboard the apex predator, carrying with it the hopes of its human family and the accumulated wisdom of a species that had turned compassion into its greatest weapon. The real battle was about to begin, fought not with energy weapons or armored hulls, but with ideas, determination, and the revolutionary concept that every individual had the right to choose their own destiny. In the depths of the Kithran flagship, a small cub with golden eyes prepared to demonstrate that sometimes the greatest acts of war were performed by those who refused to accept that peace was impossible. Elena watched the enemy fleet through the view screen, counting down the minutes until the defense force arrived and the true confrontation could begin. Whatever happened next, she knew that they had already won something important. They had proven that human values could create warriors as dedicated as any bred by the Kithara, and that love could be just as powerful as fear when it came to motivating impossible acts of courage. The hunt had become a rescue mission, and the prey had revealed themselves to be predators of an entirely different kind. Ones who fought not to dominate, but to liberate, not to conquer, but to protect. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when humanity's greatest strength met the ultimate test of its convictions. Kestis walked calmly through the corridors of the apex predator, its small form dwarfed by the massive Kithran warriors who escorted it toward Admiral Vexter's command chamber. The ship's interior reflected its builder's psychology, brutal efficiency with no consideration for comfort or beauty, every surface designed for function over form. The air carried the scent of aggression and dominance that permeated all Kithran spaces. But Kestis was no longer the terrified cub that had awakened aboard the human freighter. Days of exposure to human values had fundamentally altered its perspective, even as its enhanced neural pathways absorbed and analyzed everything it observed. The ship's layout, security protocols, crew movements, tactical systems, all of it fed into calculations that would have impressed its creators if they had understood what they were witnessing. Admiral Vexter's chamber occupied the heart of the dreadnought, a vast space dominated by holographic displays showing the current tactical situation. The Admiral himself stood at the room's center like a monument to predatory evolution, his scarred hide and battle-worn weapons telling the story of a lifetime spent conquering the weak. "Approach, prototype," Vexter commanded, his voice carrying the absolute authority of one who had never known disobedience. "Let us examine what contamination the humans have inflicted upon our perfect creation." Kestis moved closer with apparent submission, keeping its enhanced senses alert for every detail of the chamber's layout. The control interfaces, the communication nodes, the security systems, all designed to be operated by Kithran claws, but still vulnerable to someone with the proper knowledge and access. "I have returned, Admiral," Kestis said in the ritual phrases of its childhood training. "The humans attempted to corrupt my purpose, but I remained true to my conditioning." Vexter circled the small figure like a predator evaluating prey, his trained senses searching for signs of genuine submission versus calculated deception. "Tell me what you learned of human weaknesses during your captivity." "They are even more foolish than our intelligence suggested," Kestis replied, allowing contempt to color its voice. "They risk their lives for complete strangers, protect those who can offer no benefit to their survival, and believe that mercy can overcome superior force." The lies came easily, each word carefully calculated to reinforce Vexter's preconceptions while concealing the truth that blazed in Kestis's enhanced mind. It had indeed learned about human nature, their capacity for sacrifice, their unwavering loyalty to their chosen family, their ability to transform love into the motivation for impossible courage. "Excellent," Vexter purred, his suspicions apparently satisfied. "The humans' very attempts to corrupt you have provided valuable intelligence about their psychological vulnerabilities. When we begin the next phase of expansion, we will know precisely how to manipulate their protective instincts against them." Kestis felt something cold and hard crystallize in its chest at the Admiral's words. The Kithara weren't content with their current conquests. They were planning systematic exploitation of human compassion to facilitate further expansion. Elena, Dr. Chun, Marcus, and countless others like them would become victims of their own greatest virtue. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Kestis asked with perfect submission. "First, you will undergo reconditioning to purge any lingering human influence from your thought patterns. Then, you will be prepared for deep infiltration of human space. Your mission will be to identify key psychological targets, individuals whose capture or death would cause maximum emotional trauma to human leadership. The plan was as brilliant as it was monstrous. Use humanity's greatest strength against them by threatening those they were psychologically incapable of abandoning. Force human commanders to choose between tactical advantage and the lives of innocent hostages, knowing that humans would always choose to protect the vulnerable regardless of the strategic cost. The reconditioning process begins immediately," Vexter continued, gesturing toward a side chamber where specialized equipment waited. "You may experience some discomfort as we burn away the human contamination, but you will emerge as a pure expression of Kithran superiority." Kestis allowed itself to be led toward the reconditioning chamber, its enhanced senses cataloging every security measure and system access point along the way. The neural modification devices were horrifyingly sophisticated, designed to rewrite personality and memory with surgical precision. In other circumstances, the cub might have felt terror at the prospect of having its newfound understanding stripped away. But Kestis was no longer thinking like a victim. It was thinking like Elena would, looking for opportunities, calculating risks, and preparing to fight for what mattered most regardless of the personal cost. "Admiral," Kestis said as they reached the chamber's threshold, "I request permission to access the ship's database before reconditioning begins. The humans may have revealed tactical information during their attempts at corruption. Such intelligence should be preserved before my memory is modified." Vexter's eyes gleamed with predatory interest. "Explain." They spoke extensively about human defense positions, fleet movements, and command protocols. Captain Vasquez believed she was educating me about human superiority, but instead revealed strategic weaknesses that could prove valuable. It was a carefully crafted lie that played perfectly into Kithran assumptions about human arrogance. Vexter's expression shifted from suspicion to eager anticipation as he contemplated the intelligence windfall that might be extracted from the prototype's experiences. "Access granted," he decided. "Extract all useful intelligence before we begin the purification process. The Pack of Packs will be pleased to learn that human compassion has provided us with yet another advantage." Kestis was escorted to a data access terminal, its design optimized for rapid information transfer with enhanced Kithran neural systems. The moment its claws touched the interface, the cub felt the ship's entire database open before its consciousness like a vast digital landscape. Ship schematics, crew assignments, tactical protocols, communication frequencies, weapon systems, shield generators. Everything that kept the massive dreadnought operational flowed through Kestis's enhanced mind. But instead of extracting the information, it began planting carefully crafted viruses and logic bombs throughout the system. The modifications it had undergone were indeed sophisticated, but their creators had made one crucial error. They had enhanced Kestis's capabilities without truly understanding what those capabilities might become in the hands of someone motivated by love rather than conquest. "Fascinating," Kestis murmured as its claws danced across the interface. The humans' tactical discussions revealed extensive details about their defensive networks. This will require careful analysis to extract maximum value. The performance bought precious time as Kestis worked its way deeper into the ship's core systems. Each virus was carefully hidden, designed to remain dormant until triggered by the specific command codes the cub was embedding throughout the network. When activated, they would systematically disable every critical system aboard the flagship. But the masterpiece of sabotage was yet to come. Kestis located the ship's communication array and began uploading a comprehensive data package containing everything it had learned about Kithran expansion plans, fleet positions, and strategic objectives. The information would be transmitted to human space on encrypted frequencies, but not immediately. The transmission would begin only when the sabotage protocol is activated. "The data extraction is complete," Kestis announced after several minutes of intense concentration. "I have isolated all relevant intelligence about human defensive capabilities and psychological vulnerabilities. Vexter moved closer, his eagerness poorly concealed. Transmit the information to my personal files. The pack leaders will want to review these revelations immediately. Kestis complied, uploading a carefully crafted package of misinformation designed to reinforce Kithran arrogance while concealing humanity's true capabilities. The false intelligence painted human forces as poorly coordinated, psychologically fragile, and dependent on outdated technologies, exactly what the Admiral wanted to hear. Exceptional work, Vexter purred as he reviewed the fabricated data. This confirms our superiority in every meaningful category. The humans will provide even less resistance than we anticipated. A new alert chimed from the bridge communications, drawing the Admiral's attention to more immediate concerns. Admiral, came the voice of his tactical officer, the human patrol ships have arrived at the nebula's edge. They're demanding the return of their vessel and crew. Vexter's expression hardened. Let them demand. They are in no position to threaten a force of this magnitude. Maintain position and prepare to demonstrate the futility of human military intervention. But, even as he spoke, Kestis was implementing the final phase of its plan. A single command, transmitted through the data interface, activated every virus and logic bomb it had planted throughout the ship's systems. The effects would not be immediately apparent. The viruses were designed to cascade slowly, creating the illusion of random system failures rather than coordinated sabotage. Take the prototype to reconditioning, Vexter ordered, his attention focused on the approaching human ships. I want its mind cleansed and ready for deployment within the hour. Kestis allowed itself to be escorted toward the reconditioning chamber, its enhanced senses noting the first subtle signs of system degradation beginning throughout the ship. Lights flickered almost imperceptibly, environmental controls showed minor fluctuations, and communication arrays experienced brief static bursts that might be attributed to the nebula's interference. In 15 minutes, the cascade failures would reach critical systems. The ship's shields would fluctuate, weapons would experience targeting errors, and, most importantly, the communication array would begin transmitting everything Kestis had learned about Kithran plans directly to Human Defense Force intelligence. But first, it had to survive the reconditioning process, or find a way to prevent it entirely. The chamber was a nightmare of surgical precision, its neural modification devices designed to rewrite a mind with clinical efficiency. Kestis was strapped into the central apparatus, while technicians calibrated the equipment that would strip away its newfound understanding of compassion and loyalty. Beginning preliminary scans, the lead technician reported, neural pathways show extensive modification consistent with human psychological contamination. Initiating purification sequence. The first wave of neural energy hit Kestis's consciousness like a physical blow, probing for the patterns that defined its personality and values. The cub gritted its teeth against the pain, focusing on the lessons Elena had taught it about inner strength and the power of chosen identity. But, just as the technician prepared to begin the full reconditioning sequence, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The cascade system failures had reached a critical threshold, and the Apex Predator-S mighty systems were beginning to fail in ways that appeared catastrophically random. Admiral to reconditioning bay. Vexter's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. Emergency protocols are in effect. All non-essential procedures are suspended pending resolution of current crisis. Kestis felt a surge of triumph as the technicians hastily shut down the reconditioning apparatus to redirect power to critical systems. The plan was working perfectly. The sabotage created enough chaos to prevent the memory wipe while positioning it to witness the final phase of its strategy. Through the chamber's observation windows, Kestis could see crew members scrambling to address system failures that cascaded faster than they could be contained. Shield generators fluctuated wildly. Artificial gravity experienced periodic lapses, and, most critically, the weapon systems began experiencing targeting malfunctions that rendered the mighty Dreadnought's arsenal largely useless. But the greatest success was yet to come. Deep within the ship's communication array, Kestis's carefully planted transmission protocols activated, sending detailed intelligence about Kithran expansion plans directly to the approaching Human Defense Force ships. Every strategic secret, every planned target, every tactical advantage the Kithara possessed was flowing toward human space in an unstoppable data stream. Admiral Vexter stormed into the reconditioning chamber, his fury barely contained as he surveyed the chaos consuming his flagship. "What is the status of our systems?" he demanded of the technicians. "Cascade failures throughout all primary networks," came the terrified response. "We're experiencing what appears to be massive electromagnetic interference from a nebula, but the pattern suggests systematic sabotage." Vexter's predatory gaze fixed on Kestis, suspicion crystallizing into certainty as he noticed the small smile playing around the cub's features. "You," he snarled, moving closer with deadly intent. "What have you done?" Kestis met his gaze with calm satisfaction, no longer bothering to hide its true nature. "I learned from humans what it means to fight for family. And then I came home to teach you the same lesson." The Admiral's roar of rage echoed through the chamber as he lunged for the restraining device. But before he could reach it, new alerts flooded the bridge communications. The human Defense Force ships had detected the intelligence transmission and were moving to protect its source, while Kithran destroyers found themselves unable to respond effectively due to the systematic failures plaguing their weapon systems. "Admiral," the tactical officer's voice carried new urgency. "The human ships are demanding immediate cessation of hostilities and the return of their personnel. They're threatening to engage if we don't comply within 10 minutes. Vexter's claws scraped against the metal restraints as he fought to reach Kestis, but his rage was interrupted by the arrival of his command staff bearing worse news. "Sir," his second-in-command reported with barely controlled panic, "our intelligence databases have been compromised. Someone has transmitted our complete strategic plans to human space. Every expansion target, every tactical advantage, they know everything." The magnitude of the disaster hit Vexter like a physical blow. Years of planning, the accumulated secrets of a dozen successful campaigns, the strategic intelligence that had made Kithran expansion possible, all of it was now in human hands, transmitted by the very prototype they had created to ensure their continued dominance. "Ow!" he demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. Kestis smiled, and there was something in its expression that would have done credit to any predator. "You taught me to be the perfect infiltrator. You just never considered that I might choose to infiltrate you." Before Vexter could respond, the ship shuddered as human weapons struck its failing shields. The Defense Force ships had arrived in force, their captains having received the intelligence transmission and recognized both its importance and the courage of its source. They weren't just here to rescue their people. They were here to ensure that the being responsible for the greatest intelligence windfall in human history survived to see the freedom it had fought so hard to achieve. Elena's voice echoed through the ship's damaged communication system, carried on frequencies that bypassed the normal diplomatic channels. "Admiral Vexter, this is Captain Vasquez. You have something that belongs to us. Return our family member immediately, or discover what humans are capable of when we stop trying to be merciful." The threat carried weight that went far beyond the 3 ships currently engaging the Kithran fleet. The intelligence Kestis had provided would fundamentally shift the balance of power between their species, turning Kithran expansion plans into strategic disasters waiting to happen. Every advantage they possessed was now compromised, every secret plan known to their enemies. Vexter looked at the small form strapped to the reconditioning apparatus, finally, understanding the true magnitude of what he faced. This wasn't a failed prototype or a defective specimen. It was a revolutionary who had turned the Kithra's own weapons against them with devastating effectiveness. "You have doomed your creators," he said quietly. "When the Pack of Packs learns of your betrayal, they will hunt down every human who showed you kindness." Kestis's smile widened, and there was something almost pitying in its expression. "Admiral, you still don't understand. The humans didn't corrupt me. They liberated me. And now I've liberated everyone you plan to conquer from the threat of your expansion. The galaxy is about to learn that predators aren't the only ones who can hunt." The battle raging outside the ship reached a crescendo as human reinforcements arrived from deeper in the nebula. Not just the Defense Force patrol, but a full battle group that had been monitoring the situation from the beginning. Elena's rescue of a single wounded cub had triggered a response that demonstrated humanity's true military capabilities when properly motivated. As Kithran ships found their weapons offline and their shields failing, as human forces moved with coordinated precision to disable rather than destroy, as intelligence flowed toward human space that would prevent countless future conquests, Admiral Vexter finally understood what Elena had tried to tell him. Compassion wasn't humanity's weakness. It was their secret weapon, capable of inspiring acts of courage and sacrifice that no amount of conditioning could create or counter. And sometimes the greatest warriors were those who fought not to conquer, but to liberate, not to dominate, but to protect. The liberation of Kestis was complete, but it was only the beginning of a larger transformation that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be truly strong. The cub that had once been destined to serve as humanity's downfall had instead become the architect of its greatest strategic victory, proving that love could indeed triumph over fear when backed by sufficient courage and determination. The hunt was over. The real war, a war of ideas and values rather than weapons and conquest, was about to begin. And for the first time in galactic history, the predators were about to learn what it felt like to become the prey.